Hello everyone, welcome back to Building Your Pathway to Recovery, the web series where we look at how different datasets can help you build your recovery strategies. My name is Signe and I work in travel audience marketing team based in Madrid office.
Hello everyone, my name is Marzena. I work at the travel audience office in Berlin, and there I work on the DMO team. So I work with destinations such as yourselves to help them promote and bring incremental visitors to their destinations. And this data web series is aimed at us sharing our knowledge and experience with you to help you on your pathway to recovery. So each episode we will be covering a certain data set and explaining to you how you can leverage that to make better and more strategic decisions for your destination. But before we jump into this episode, I would like to take a few moments to recap what we covered last time around. So we discussed how important it is for you to find out who your ideal visitor is in the times of the new normal, how important it is to adapt your marketing activities and messaging according to the changed travel behavior, and how to strengthen your relationship with industry players.
In today's episode, we would like to cover the topic of airline connectivity and airline capacity and see how it can impact your destination. The three topics we will be looking at today are: what are the overall effects of air connectivity to your destination? We're also going to be taking a look how this data can help you understand your visitor even better. And last but not least, we will take a look how airline connectivity can impact your marketing activities as well. But before we start, just out of curiosity, Marzena, what are the first things you do when planning a trip?
The moment that I decide where I want to go, the first thing is probably I'll check the flights. There's an example. I always wanted to just cover Slovenia, but the connections from Berlin to Ljubljana are rather limited, so it never really worked with my schedule so far. A destination can be really great and doing amazing marketing, but if the connections are limited, then they will really only reach those visitors that are willing to go above and beyond to go there. Especially imagine in the example of some remote islands, it can be really tough to find a connection to get there. Of course, the last few months were unprecedented for the airline industry, and we saw a huge reduction in flights across the whole globe.
According to the July report of Official Aviation Guide, the current seat capacity has actually already increased by 50% if we compare to last month. So there's more and more carriers already operating flights. At the same time, it's still 47% lower than the volumes we were seeing at this time last year. Let's take a look how these improvements look from the data perspective. So here on the screen you can see the global seat capacity evolution in 2019 and how it compares to what we see this year. So we see the huge drop in March when most of the carriers stopped operating, but then the line is starting to pick up, indicating that more and more carriers are actively operating the flights. So the volumes currently are getting closer and closer to what we saw this time last year already.
So right now it is really important to monitor the air capacity and traffic data to understand which travelers are actually coming to your destination and when. But before we jump into that, let's look at what capacity and traffic data actually is. So this data set consists of two concepts. The first one includes the number of seats on the airplanes scheduled by airlines to your destination. In order to understand how many of these seats were actually occupied by travelers, and therefore estimate the number of how many true visitors came to your destination, we then need to look at the traffic data. Making use of air capacity and traffic data can help you answer the following questions you might have. What is the number of visitors that are coming and staying in my destination? Which are the source markets that they are coming from? What is the true origin country of my visitors? And what airlines have service to my destination? By knowing all of that, you can answer the two most crucial questions. When should I advertise, and who should I actually advertise to?
Let's focus a bit more on the airline capacity. So just to remind you, this is the seats that airlines are planning to operate to your destination. Let's take a look at how this could help you know when would be a good time to relaunch your promotional activities. In the current times, it's harder than before to know the markets or the right timing for marketing activities. And airline seat capacity data can help with this to some extent. By looking at the most recent data of the current week or the few upcoming weeks, you can know which flights are already being serviced and actively operating, so you can know which markets are physically able to come to the destination. At the same time, the current situation has slightly changed the way we look at this data set, because airlines are also facing the same situation as the destinations, and it's nearly impossible to know what's going to happen in the future. As we can see in the data example on the screen, which shows the scheduled air capacity from London to Jamaica for this year and how it compares to last year, there has been some flights operating already since mid-June, and there's more and more flights scheduled in the upcoming months, with more flights scheduled for September than there were last year. So this indicates that airlines are starting to pick up, but also confirms a trend that we see overall, is that airlines adjust their capacity for the next 2 months and keep the rest of the months with the schedules that were planned before that. This means that this capacity is still subject to cancellations in the upcoming months.
In order to best use this data for estimating potential recovery periods, it needs to be closely monitored. By spotting the latest changes, destinations can pick the best moment to adapt their messaging. For example, when should they go from inspirational to more conversion-oriented call to action campaigns? We continue to see fascinating inspirational campaigns aiming to put a dream of a destination into a traveler's mind. Not now, they say, but when the borders are open again and flights are resumed. At the end of April, Finnair's employee choir virtually performed the song "We Will Meet Again" that was launched on the airline's YouTube channel, because they were all eagerly awaiting the day when they can welcome passengers on board again. Speaking about dreaming and getting inspired, here you can see a beautiful creative made by Visit Jamaica.
Could you be loved and be loved? Could you be loved? Could you be loved?
Let's jump to our second question of what would be the best way in knowing the right markets for starting your marketing activities. And just to remind you, we're still talking about airline capacity data or the seats scheduled to your destination. From air capacity data, the best option would be to look at the current flights or the flights scheduled in the next few weeks, because this way you can know what flights are actively operating and are most likely there to stay. So in this example for Malta that you see on the screen, we have looked at the seat capacity to Malta this week and the top cities that have direct flight connections with Malta. What you can see that there's a huge variety of different origins able to reach Malta via direct flight, but 4 out of the 10 are actually cities located in Italy. So we have Catania, Rome, Milan, and Naples as well. So this could be a signal for Malta that Italy could be a good market to relaunch your activities again. And in advertising, what we normally see is that origins that have direct flights with your destination result in better conversions in the end. So in general, all of these 10 cities have high potential for marketing activities for Malta already. Air capacity data can offer great insights as to where your travelers are flying from. So many times the convenience of having a direct flight to your destination is a key factor that influences traveler decision-making process, especially in the current times when most of the travelers are trying to avoid any additional exposure. What you see in the current data example is the scheduled seat capacity to 3 different destinations in South Europe. So this is the direct flights that are scheduled to Malta, Sardinia and Sicily, or what are the origins that travelers are able to come. So we can see that actually these being quite similar destinations, many of the origins are the same. So we can see that all of the 3 destinations receive high seat capacity from London. At the same time, if we take a closer look, you can see that different destinations have different options when it comes to flying. So for example, Malta Out of the top 5, 3 of these are Italian origin, so Rome, Milan and Catania. So essentially, actually Malta in this case is competing with the Italian domestic market when thinking about Sardinia and Sicily. Another example would be like Sardinia, that is very well connected with Poland. So someone in Poland could be more likely to travel to Sardinia rather than Malta or Sicily, just based on the fact that they have a direct flight option when it comes to choosing these destinations. An additional point to take into consideration is that this data could also be useful for those destinations that are smaller or that don't even have an airport. By looking at the flight options to nearby airports or larger cities can give you an idea what international travelers might later come to your destination via other means of transport, like train or car, for example.
To conclude, let's see how air capacity data can actually help you. You can use it to understand the moment when to shift focus of your messaging from inspirational to more conversion-oriented. Once flights resume and your destination has enough air capacity, it's a good time to attract and win visitors, as they are now able to arrive by air. Furthermore, air capacity data can help you to identify popular origin markets and markets with a majority of direct flights scheduled, and then focus your marketing activities there. We just covered air capacity and direct flights. Let's take a look at a different perspective now. As our world is so big and it's not always possible to reach a destination with a direct flight, there are numerous large international hubs in the world, such as London, Chicago, Istanbul, Jakarta, or Abu Dhabi, and many more. They are connecting our world and make it possible to travel from one corner of the earth to another. Keeping this in mind, it is not always possible to know where your travelers are really coming from, as well as if they are staying in your destination or just connecting to the next flight. In order to identify where the travelers are really coming from, airport statistics, which are a valuable source, might give you only partial information. In reality, travelers' itinerary can be complex and often include multiple connections and stopovers. That's why it's important to work with data to identify the true origin of your travelers. By the way, we also touched on the topic of true origin in the very first episode, where we covered big data and the customer journey.
I actually have a real-life example to illustrate this. So a few years ago, I had to travel to Jakarta, Indonesia for a friend's wedding. So to my surprise, when I was looking for flight options, there were actually no direct flights from Madrid to Jakarta. So I ended up booking a trip with a connection in Abu Dhabi. So if Indonesia would look at me arriving in the airport, from the airport arrival statistics, I would appear as a traveler from the United Arab Emirates. So in this case, they could not identify that there's travelers and demand coming from, in my case, the Spanish market. And we can actually see how this looks in a number of values if we look on the data from European market to Jakarta overall. So actually, currently, there's only 2 direct flight options from Europe to Jakarta, which is from Netherlands and UK, and Netherlands holds 90% of these seats from Europe to Jakarta. So if you would look at airport statistics, you would assume that most of the travelers arriving from Europe should come from Netherlands. But if we look at the traffic, so the actual visitors, most of these visitors actually come from United Kingdom and a lot of different markets within Europe. So this really gives us an understanding that there might be a huge influence of the direct flight availability, but it's not always matching of who actually comes to your destination. But let's get back to my travel story to Indonesia for a second. If you remember, I mentioned that I was traveling through Abu Dhabi, and air traffic and capacity data can actually be very useful for major hubs like Abu Dhabi in this case. If you see on the screen, we have calculated how many passengers that land in Abu Dhabi airport actually end up staying there. So we can see that only 35% of all those passengers landing have Abu Dhabi as their final destination. 65% or all the other travelers actually only use this as their first or second connection for traveling. And then breaking it even down more, you can see who are these travelers that are connecting there, who are those that are staying. What many big hubs, like in this case Abu Dhabi, could do is try to think about ways how they can target these travelers that use this as a connection. So maybe promoting extended stay campaigns or encouraging them to stay longer than just for a connection.
Here you can see an example of a stopover campaign that we did for South Korea. They were targeting Canadian travelers heading to Shanghai with a connection in Seoul. And now I would like to quickly recap what we have covered today when it comes to the use of traffic data and reinforce the following points. For a final destination, it can help you to find out which origin markets show demand for your destination and then advertise there. And for a destination that is mainly a connecting hub, target travelers using your destination as a connection point, so those visitors stay and discover your destination during their stopover.
Let me now introduce the concept of air connectivity. By this we mean the ability or the ease that travelers have when it comes to reaching your destination. So in normal circumstances, this would be the ideal combination of the seat capacity and the flight frequency. So let's imagine there's a market that is showing a lot of demand to your destination. So in ideal circumstances, this demand would be perfectly matched with the seats available in the market. But sometimes the arrangement might be quite different. Sometimes there is not enough supply or flights and available seats to meet all the demand that your destination is receiving.
On this slide, you can see some of our findings when it comes to Jamaica's air connectivity. For every 10,000 internet searches from these European cities to Jamaica, we only saw as little as 8 actual visitors, which shows a huge discrepancy between the demand to Jamaica from Europe and the actual traffic. There's a great opportunity to attract more visitors when supplying more airplane seats, especially in the current situation. By having these insights, a destination can start the conversation with airlines to add more flights or open new routes. If a DMO is able to demonstrate to an airline with the use of data that there is demand and that it's actually growing, it will be much easier for them to convince them to add more direct flights to their destination.
Okay, let's quickly sum up the things we have been looking at today. So first of all, we were looking at air capacity data as a key driver for deciding when you could switch your focus from inspirational to conversion campaigns. We also were identifying the most promising markets that you could relaunch your marketing activities. We were also looking at how data shows you ways in understanding where are visitors coming from and how this could be used for stopover campaigns. And last but not least, we were talking about data as a conversation starter with airlines. In the next week's episode, we will be looking how you can combine different data sets in optimizing your recovery strategies. That's it for today. Thank you very much for joining, and we really hope to see you next time as well.